value from success, growth in discovery. Golden Arrow Resources is a well-funded gold-copper exploration company with proven management and prospective properties in Chile, Argentina, and Paraguay. Golden Arrow trades on the Toronto Venture Exchange, symbol GRG, on Frankfurt, symbol G6A, and the OTCQB, symbol GARWF. For more information, visit us at goldenarrowresources.com or call Sean at 778-686-0135.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, her website, taxpayer.com. Welcome back to the show, Kris, and I hope you're staying warm.
Yes, it's minus 18 out here in the Fraser Valley with the wind chill right now, so I hope everybody else is staying warm too.
And apparently this is from the Weather Channel. This is a very unusual record cold snap for Canada because all 10 provincial capitals are below zero. And they said for that to happen simultaneously across a country as big as Canada, especially when you have Victoria, which is hung out into the warm Pacific, that rarely happens, but it's happening.
Wow, it's quite something for the record books. We hope 2021 improves after this, but it's usually, you're right, Victoria, not quite yet, but usually in a couple of weeks' time they're busy teasing the rest of Canada with their cherry blossoms, so we'll see.
Well, I kind of teased the rest of Canada too 2 days ago on my walk along the quay in New Westminster, taking pictures of flowers and putting them on Twitter. And I noticed Global National, when they did their story on weather across Canada and how cold it was, they came down to New Westminster Quay where there's palm trees and blooming flowers and talked to the people about, oh, it's so cold, it's -1. When my little sister in Peace River, Alberta, which is 500 k's north of Edmonton, is -39.
Oh, without the wind.
-55 wind chill.
Holy, see, that's what caused it. We were bragging.
And also, Kris, I mean, you're saying we should be using a lot of natural gas in Canada, and a cold wave like this, solar and wind isn't going to cut it.
No, absolutely not. A lot of times those emerging renewables, I'll call them, break down in this kind of cold, and of course also this amount of blowing snow will cover solar panels. And so it's only by having oil and gas that we're able to frankly stay alive and stay warm and keep the lights running. A lot of times people actually don't use hydroelectricity. A lot of our electricity across Canada comes still from oil and gas. And so, you know, let's be thankful for our natural resources here in Canada. We're certainly using them this week.
And British Columbia, I believe, has 200 years of proven reserves of natural gas, so it's not like we're going to run out anytime soon. And if you do it right, it is not a polluting source, or hardly at all.
Absolutely. For years and years, those of us in our generation were told about the clean burning blue flame, especially here in British Columbia, and we were all urged to make the switch over to natural gas, and that's why a lot of households did. And it's much more affordable, by and large, and it's way cleaner burning than, say, fuel oil, or even in some cases, if you can believe it, there's still some folks in different little small towns in Atlantic Canada that burn coal still. That was surprising to me. I learned that the other day. And so, yeah, it's way cleaner, and it's very sustainable, and it's something that we should be definitely using. But unfortunately, it is carbon taxed, both here in British Columbia and federally, and the new carbon tax that's coming out is going to affect it as well. And so we've got to really buckle up here, because the carbon tax cost is going to go way up within the next 10 years. By the year 2030, your heating bill is going to be way higher, and that's because Prime Minister Justin Trudeau broke a promise, he lied, and now he's jacking up the carbon tax past $50 a ton.
With the carbon tax in BC, which has been around at least a dozen years, has it had any beneficial effect on carbon emissions?
No, and this is the thing that I think a lot of people need to know. Back in 2008, when they first brought in the carbon tax, the politicians at the time told us lots of stuff, typically. They said that it'll stop at $30 a ton, that it would always be revenue neutral, that the money would all flow into creating a bunch of affordable alternative energies that we could use, and they'd become abundant and really handy. And they also, this is key, they said that the carbon tax would make emissions go down, but it hasn't. Emissions have actually gone up in British Columbia. They've gone up 10% in the last 3 years, and they have gone up in 5 of the last 7, with the highest carbon tax in Canada. So, and it's also not even called revenue neutral anymore. It goes straight into general revenue, about $1.5 billion every single year. So it's a big, expensive failure. All it's doing is costing us more to heat our homes and to drive to work and to heat our rec centers and our local schools and to grow our vegetables in greenhouses. All of this stuff, it makes everything more expensive. And so that's why it's super frustrating that we still have it. And this is key going forward. Very interestingly, John Horgan, when he was in opposition with the NDP, he railed against the carbon tax for the very reason I'm doing it right now. He said that it would cost people too much to heat their homes where the wild winds blow on the West Coast and too much to drive to work. And he was right then. He knew it then. Now he's the premier. Very interestingly, we were set to have the carbon tax jump up to $45 a ton last spring, but he didn't do it. He hit pause on our BC carbon tax, but Justin Trudeau didn't. He jacked up his federal carbon tax. So, speaking personally, I think John Horgan gets it. This was a guy who waited tables at the keg to put himself through and save up for university. He used to work at a pulp mill, apparently used to even drive trucks. So he seems to get what the average person goes through to make ends meet and pay bills. Prime Minister Trudeau certainly does not. He's never had to worry about making rent or, making ends meet ever. And so that's an indicator. Horgan paused it, Trudeau didn't. So we think there's a chance, actually, that Premier Horgan will have that moment where he comes full circle and say, you know what? This thing isn't working. Emissions are going up. This is taking money out of people's pockets when they need it most. I'm canceling it. And we hope he does. We hope he cancels the BC carbon tax and fights Trudeau on it.
Well, doesn't this record cold snap across Canada demonstrate how we can't just give up fossil fuels because we live in the second coldest nation on Earth? Apparently Russia gets a bit colder than us now and then. But Russia doesn't have a policy against fossil fuels.
No, they're not busy trying to strangle their own resource sector and make people, freeze in the dark. And that you hit the nail on the head. Not only is the federal government especially making it more and more difficult to afford something as essential as oil and gas. They're the lifeblood of our economy. Look around you right now, wherever you are. I will guarantee you that the vast majority of items around you are either made directly from oil, meaning they're plastic or some sort of polymer, or they've been created and manufactured using oil and gas, and then of course delivered to you using those things. It's very difficult to find something in our everyday life that isn't using oil and gas. And on top of that, as you pointed out, most people use oil and gas to heat their homes, to keep from freezing, to keep their pipes from freezing. And then if we look at the agriculture sector, well, what do they think that those combines and tractors and those trucks run on? All of those items and machines use oil and gas. And then, this is something a lot of people don't know. Most farmers have to dry their product, their grains or their oil seeds or whatever it is they're bringing in, and they use natural gas to do that. I have seen bills for these farmers across the prairies that are tens of thousands of dollars now just for the federal carbon tax. And that's before it's being jacked up. Like, they made the announcement that it's being jacked up like crazy within the next 9 years. So, we're in for it here. We need to see some major policy changes or regular life for everyday people is going to become unaffordable.
And as Paul Landry from the BC Trucking Association pointed out, unless you grew it in your garden, everything in your house was in a truck at some time.
Yes, including the seeds.
Including the seeds, yes.
Think of just the seeds that came to you, unless you took it from some heirloom vegetable that's been in your garden for generations and kept it yourself, and if you have, good on you. You're a better gardener than I am. But you're right. Everything comes to us on trucks. And yes, they're working on electric trucks. We will get there eventually. And I will point out we're going to have to figure out a plan fast in order to allow for that kind of grid load. So if that means we're going to have to deal with modular nuclear, if we need bigger hydro, we're going to need big electric infrastructure to take that load on the grid when they do come, and they probably will eventually. But we're certainly not there yet. We can't switch tomorrow. We can't even switch within the next 9 years and afford it.
We'll have more with Kris Sims right after this.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, recycling trade publications, patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Avon Resources Limited is a gold exploration company with significant projects in British Columbia and the Yukon, trading on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol ABN, and the OTCQB, symbol ABNAF. Surrounded by world-class gold deposits and mines, Avon's 23,000 hectares Forest Kerr Gold Project is located in the heart of the Golden Triangle in northwestern BC. For more information, visit us at avonresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, the CEO of the BC Provincial Health Services Authority, has been given the boot. He was making $352,000 a year, and he gets 9 months severance, which just off the top of my head is about $250,000. Should he be getting severance, considering there were several allegations about his mishandling of money, including adding $400,000 to unneeded $17 million in renovations just so he could get a better view from his office?
Yeah, there's so much here. It would be really nice if we actually had a big, strong, robust, very determined team of watchdogs who were auditors, who took a look at things like the provincial books, provincial spending, contracts awarded, and then we also had a team for the city level, because it's stuff like this that drives people crazy. This severance here alone, based on how you worked it out, $250,000, that is more than 3 times, that's about 3 times the amount of 3 two-person working families in BC. The average two-person working family takes in just over $80,000 per year. So this one piece of severance that is coming out to one person here is more than triple that. So that's disappointing. This amount of money, from the reports, and when I first saw it, it was actually a whistleblower that was talking to the CBC in BC, so credit where it's due for that journalism. The whistleblower said that around $7 million had been wasted on masks that don't even work. They were so faulty and so poorly made that nobody could use them. So $7 million, that's a staggering amount of money. Then we're hearing, like you said, that allegedly renovations were redone. Apparently it had already been done, and they did re-renovations, apparently so that a better view could be found. And then I also was reading in the original story that somewhere between, the numbers are rough, but somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000 of taxpayers' money was spent on catered lunches during the depths of the lockdown last spring. So between, say, March and June, they were guesstimating. They were spending that amount of money, tens of thousands of dollars, on catered lunches for these executives, for this brass, and they were dining on things like avocado toast and steak and some sort of a salad that I can't pronounce. It's like Nicoy's salad or something super fancy. Why? Why are we footing the bill for catered lunches for these executives when they're making this kind of money and making, frankly, terrible decisions on procurement of PPE? It's not a good expenditure at all.
Should fired public officials be getting these golden handshakes, or should they just be booted out the door, especially if there's been some kind of fiscal malfeasance or alleged malfeasance?
Well, speaking generally, when you think of this example, and then you back up a little bit...
I mean, in the private sector, if you're stealing from your boss, you're put out the door.
Yeah,
and you don't get anything
there.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of a bad thing to do. I think it begs the question, well, if an example, just using this as an example, if misspending $7 million on really bad stuff and all of these other allegations, if that isn't cause, then what is cause in the government sector for jobs? Be really curious to know what their standard is there. You know, where's the line? Because we certainly need more accountability here. This is taxpayers' money. They can't just treat it like some magical pot that they can just throw money at whenever they want to. We need more accountability and answers here.
Now, this sounds like, what's the term when public officials feel everything is due to them? Entitlement. This seems like a pure case of that. Now, this gentleman came from Montreal, which is famous for not really being above board for a lot of stuff. I'm not saying that he's involved in any of that, but there is a culture there and in a lot of government offices that once you're in there, your primary job isn't to do your job, but to soak the taxpayer for every penny you can get.
And again, this is why, we don't care if it's the Flying Monkey Party in charge. Okay, this is not a partisan issue.
I like the Flying Monkeys.
I love Flying Monkeys too. They're fun, and they seem to really get stuff done. So, Team Flying Monkey. And so, this is why we need mechanisms. We need mechanisms like strong, robust, very investigative, hardworking, tenacious auditors. We need auditors general. We need investigators. We need teams of these people. We need people who can take whistleblower calls. We need these folks minding the store who are nonpartisan, and that is all their job. That's all they do, is examine these contracts, investigate any alleged malfeasance, any alleged back scratching going on, and that way, when people are appointed to these government jobs, they do work hard because they know that if they are tempted to try to, fiddle around and get more money than they deserve or whatever it is we're thinking of, that people will probably catch them. And so if we have those checks and balances, that keeps everybody above board and honest, and we'll get a lot better work out of these folks.
We'll have more from Kris Sims right after this.
Engineer Gold Mines is focused on the exploration and development of the historic high-grade Engineer Gold Mine situated 32 kilometers southwest of Atlin, British Columbia. Engineer Gold Mines is fully permitted for surface and underground exploration with the drill program now underway. Engineer Gold Mines Limited trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol EAU. For more information, please visit us at engineergoldmines.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Kris Sims. Kris, ICBC, the provincial mandatory car insurance company in British Columbia, is going to offer rebates to customers because there were many fewer accidents during the COVID pandemic. Is it too little, too late?
Oh, it's completely too little, too late. We here at the Canadian Taxpayers Federation have been asking and demanding and begging and pleading to get rebates for BC drivers now for months. I'm guessing around 9 or 10 months or so. Because, frankly, other drivers in other parts of Canada, most of them got their rebates back last spring. Apparently it was between April and June that they were getting their rebates of last year. So, and now we're being promised these ones are coming sometime next month in March. And they're a lot lower too. I was looking at the Assurance Bureau of Canada, which is like an umbrella group for insurance providers in other parts of Canada for private insurance companies. And they said on their release that the average rebate amount that was given out to other drivers in different parts of Canada was around $250 or so. We're getting $190 on average, and it's a year later. So it's super frustrating that it's taken so long, to be as positive as I can. We're glad it's happening. This is a good thing. It's a bit of a win. Glad it's finally being coughed up. But it's a lot lower than what average people are getting in other parts of Canada, and it's way later. And so that's why it stinks. And somebody asked me once, they said, well, why have we waited so long? It's because we have nowhere else to go. What are we going to do? If you and I are mad about what we're paying for ICBC and what we're not getting back in the rebate yet, what are we going to do? Phone them up and threaten to go elsewhere? You can't. You're stuck. And this is why government-forced monopolies on these sorts of services are terrible. Because they can do whatever they want. You can get as mad as you want, and it doesn't matter. You're stuck with it.
Originally, the idea of a government-run insurance program was to make it affordable for parents to insure their cars so their teens could drive them. Is ICBC really affordable for families?
No. So quite often, and to be fair, insuring a younger person is always more expensive because they don't have the experience and their insurance company is taking a bigger risk. Insurance rates are all based on risk and demographics and likelihood and all that stuff. So a young person, not to generalize, but a young person is statistically much more likely to get into a crash than an older, more experienced person. So that's why they pay a higher rate, period. And to the point of your making here with the government monopoly, most of these ideas are honestly started with good intentions. They are. They're started with good intentions. They want to help. People think this is a good solution, but then it gets bogged down with the same bureaucracy that we'll see in every other situation of a government monopoly, and things go sideways. We've seen similar things with the daycare system in Quebec, where they're spending, more than $1 billion on it every year, and it's not quote unquote free or $5 a day. They start with good intentions, and then it gets bogged down with unions, government unions, and bureaucrats and all that stuff, and there's no need to innovate. If you're one-stop not shopping, and you've got a guaranteed job forever, where's your incentive to innovate and be nimble, right? There isn't going to be any. And so this is why now it's time for ICBC to be opened up to competition. So if they don't want to scrap it, that's fine. Just open it up to competition. And if it's so good, if people who love ICBC want to stick with it, they can. But then the rest of us can go shop around and try to save money. And we think that would do two things. One, it'd be more fair, because the rest of us would be allowed to shop around and not stuck with monopoly. And two, it would probably improve ICBC. Because ICBC would look across the street and go, Acme Corp is offering this. We better get our act together or we're going to lose customers. That's how this system works, or it should.
Kris, the federal government now says people who applied for the Canadian Emergency Benefit CERB won't have to pay it back because the original application form they were given said, did you make $5,000 last year? If you did and you've lost money due to the epidemic, you can apply for this thing. And then the Canadian Revenue Agency said, no, we meant net pay. Is it good that this isn't going to be clawed back because the application form didn't mention net pay. It just said pay.
It just said
income. Yeah.
So this is on the feds then. If that's their mistake, that's their mistake. It doesn't seem, I think, to be generally fair to try to claw that back on people who would have made an earnest. They think they were filling it out in earnest. So if that's their screw up on the Fed side, then yeah, it wouldn't be fair to claw that back to people. To be as fair as possible, back in February, March, April, it was a scramble to get this money out the door. And it would be better to get the money out the door faster to save as many people's livelihoods and mortgage payments and rent payments and grocery bills as possible, and then go in and clear up the details. But something as simple as not putting net pay on an application form from the government side, they should have caught that on the government side when this first started out. So yeah, the person who's actually filling out the form in good faith, that's not their fault.
Anything else, Kris, that caught your eye that taxpayers should either be happy about or outraged?
They really need, this is a full court press. We need all taxpayers to be keeping a close eye on the federal government, and this comes down to accountability when it comes to the vaccine rollout. Okay? We elect these people to represent us in the House of Commons. We do elect the Prime Minister in a way because we elect the majority for his party and then they have him be the leader, of course. Our vaccine rollout, last I checked as of today online, we're below Maldives. So we are way, way down there on the list as far as vaccine per 100 people or wherever the ratio is. And we're even tapping into a global pool of vaccines that is typically used for developing nations, for poorer nations. Canada is. We're the only G7 country that's doing that. I don't know anybody who's happy with that. And the buck stops with the boss. And the boss right now is Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And if you're tired of this terrible vaccine rollout and bad procurement strategy and the fact that not enough people are getting the shot who want it right now, you need to tell him, send him a firm but polite email, phone the Prime Minister's office, phone your local member of parliament, no matter the party, and you tell them that you expect better. Because this gets down to accountability. And a lot of people are holding their breath to get the economy rolling again, to open their businesses again, to be able to see their loved ones again, based on a vaccine. And if we're the last in line, then all of us are suffering for that. So we want people to hold the Prime Minister to account. This is about transparency and accountability as far as the CTF is concerned. So phone your elected member of parliament and you tell them you're not impressed. And in fact, call your provincial MLA too. Because I can't imagine that the MLAs here at the provincial level are very pleased with the feds. Because it's up to the feds to get the vaccine. And then it's up to the provinces to get it in the arm. Well, if there's nothing coming on the truck or the plane, there's nothing the province can do. So contact all levels of your government and you let them know if you're displeased with this rollout.
What about federal prisoners getting the vaccine before pensioners and first-line workers?
Yeah, isn't that sad? You know, I think everybody knows somebody who's elderly and, you know, a little ill or afraid and they have comorbidities who haven't seen their families now for months and months. And people, you know, so many people who are at risk, and yet they rolled it out there. Now, if we all had the same amount of vaccine rollout all at the same time, and people were lining up at hockey rinks and it was a proper vaccine rollout the way we saw, for example, with swine flu, and it was done very quickly, then, you know, the argument could be made, well, you know, they're in a prison population and they're all sequestered together, you know, that's a high rate of transmission. But then I was also reading that the prison guards weren't getting it. I was reading based on what the reports was I was reading, and they were mainstream news reports, they were giving it to prisoners, but not to the guards themselves, who are in the same environment and at similar risk. So it's just one of those head-smacking situations going, really? This is first of the line, and now there's no vaccine coming for weeks? So we need some serious answers here, and all we can do at this point is really urge the government to pull their socks up as much as possible and get as much vaccine as we can.
I still wonder why, when we knew this pandemic was going to happen, that the federal government didn't immediately start ordering new vaccine factories and production facilities. Why wait now? And the ones that they have ordered won't be ready for another 2 or 3 years. Yeah, it really looks, based on the interviews that we can see, there are companies that say, like, we're not the vaccine experts at the CTF, but we are about accountability and transparency. And I can watch the news like everybody else. And there are news reports and talk shows right now talking to people who say, we reached out to the federal government. We could have been manufacturing them in Alberta, or I think I also saw in Ontario. But the phone didn't ring. Nothing happened. It really sounds like there were a lot of balls dropped here. And what's really bad about this is that it's going to affect people's health, because God forbid, they might get sick in the meantime when they should have had a vaccine, compared to, say, the States or the UK or maybe another comparable G7 country. And people's lives are on hold, and they're suffering mentally for it. So some folks have got to have some answers here when they're called to the carpet. And so that's why we urge that people be polite, okay? If you use bad language or something, it won't be read. So be firm, be clear, and be polite. You write that Prime Minister, and you write your local elected representatives, and you tell them you expect better, and you want to know when you're getting your vaccine, if you want it. Kris, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thank you for caring so much. We really appreciate it.
Kris, where can people go if they have concerns or would like to know more about the Taxpayers Federation?
Oh, we'd love it if you visit our website. We also have some good tips on how to write a strong letter, how to make a good phone call, that sort of thing, to any elected MLA or MP. Go to taxpayer.com, and you can reach us there.
My guest has been Kris Sims, BC Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation. Her website again, taxpayer.com. If you have any questions for Kris or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@howstreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @TalkDigitalNet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.